Welcome ladies and gents, Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter. Of course, you can subscribe to this channel. Let's talk boxing. Anthony Joshua with a highlight reel knockout over Robert Helenius in the 7th round as he prepares for a big showdown against Deontay Wilder. It set that up nicely, didn't it, that knockout? But let's talk about the performance. Let's talk about what AJ might have learned from this fight. I didn't do a preview, but I did talk about why I felt that Robert Helenius was a very good late replacement and the perfect preparation for Deontay Wilder in terms of the available opponents. And I think you saw tonight why I was saying that. As I'd said the other day, he's a sort of guy that can get on the back foot. And he looks as though he's inactive, but he's making you tentative. He's making you worry about throwing that right hand. And you saw AJ in the corner tell Derek James, I can't reach him with the right hand. He's essentially taking the right hand away from me. And that is what I meant when I was saying how, because he's capable of doing things like that, and you have the threat of that right hand of Helenius, that makes you tentative to step in. You can't just run red lights against him because you could walk onto something. Because of that, you have to think about how you're going to enter the pocket. And that is what makes it good preparation for Deontay Wilder, rather than say guys like Gerald Washington, who we'll also talk about later on in this video. But in my opinion, Washington was never going to compete with AJ on a technical perspective. He was never going to be able to take away that right hand. So you would have seen AJ dominate from the start, in my humble opinion, and then knocking him out early, and he wouldn't have learned anything from it. Whereas with this performance, although it wasn't vintage AJ, it wasn't the best performance from Anthony Joshua overall, it was tepid in many regards. Despite that, it's something whereby he's going to see certain areas that worked for him and didn't work for him, and he still gets the confidence of that highlight reel knockout. And it's the sort of knockout whereby he's going to feel he earned it. And there's a different type of confidence that comes when you have to earn a knockout compared to when you know a guy's nowhere near your level, right? So for me, in terms of what he's gained, it was brilliant. But in terms of the fight itself, it wasn't brilliant from start to finish. I actually had Robert Helenius winning the first couple of rounds. He couldn't miss AJ with the jab early on. AJ, his right eye started to swell up pretty quickly. By the end of the fight, he also had a bloodied nose. So he was getting touched in there. And one of the problems that he had, in my opinion, is that he's trying to learn this new style with Derek James, and he's yet to fully acclimatise to it. He had that high guard, and he wasn't really bouncing at the knee, bending at the knee. They called it a bounce on TV. It's not really a bounce in the sense that AJ was never really a sort of like Evander Holyfield type of bouncer who jumps in and out. But what he did used to do is bend at the knees a lot and change the level, and he'd do it quite consistently and quite quickly and change how low he's coming down each time, and he's making himself an uneven target, an unstable target, and then from there he'll start off an attack. He was a lot more planted and flat-footed with his feet, and he had a slight shift of his weight onto that lead foot. And what that was doing with AJ was it was letting him, by crouching, shoot an up jab, okay, but then the backhand was out of range, and he wasn't stepping in with that jab or shifting his feet in closer before throwing that backhand. So in the first couple of rounds, you saw him throw these wild right hooks and right hands that were falling well short. And Helenius, as I said, very good at pulling away and making him fall short. So what I tweeted in the second round was, so I tweeted, I was doing a sort of live along tweet on each round, how I was scoring it. And I said after round one, AJ looks a bit tentative and trying to engage with a pouring lead hand, and then trying to lead with power shots on occasion, but he's fallen short. He's yet to settle. Helenius finding a home with the jab, but his exit point looks slow. And I'll tell you why I said that in a moment. Second round, 2-0 Helenius. He's dictating with the jab. AJ looks like a fighter learning a new style. Slight bend at the knees, high guard with weight shifted onto that front foot. But he's lunging in to close the range. He needs to jab, change the level, and then go on that second phase. Because Helenius' exit was slow. In other words, he's moving backwards well and taking that jab away from you using range. And he's doing it by taking that first step back. But from there, he's then not exiting quickly enough. So you take that half a step back just to maximize the range. We know he's a tall guy with a long reach. But then from there, if you're going to go with that second phase of attack, if you're going to bypass that first attack and then get close, he's not pivoting out. He's not changing the angle. He's not coming out quickly. So you'll be able to find him if you can draw something from Helenius to then go at him in the second phase. From there, I said round 3, Helenius better. It was 2-1 to Helenius. So I had AJ winning the third. Better from AJ. On 2 occasions, he threw that throwaway shot, changed the level and came up with a power shot, and it did indeed land. Nice jab to the body too. Helenius is moving well and taking half a step back when AJ's seeking to enter, which is making AJ reset. So he's still being given something to think about here, Anthony Joshua. 4th round, 2-2. Again, it goes to AJ. Again, he's using the feint and the level change followed by the backhand, and it was landing for AJ. Helenius' exit point remains slow. Hence why that second phase of attack is working. It's very sporadic though. It's a bit rare from AJ. He's a little bit too passive and he's flat-footed. You're not seeing that bend at the knee. You're still seeing that shift of the weight onto that front foot. And you can see the swelling on his eye now a lot more clearly. You can also see blood from Helenius's nose. Fifth round, 3-2 to Anthony Joshua. There was a cupping right hand and left hook from Helenius, and it was solid. And AJ seemed to want to compose himself. He stopped throwing punches at that point, and he was just sort of covering up. But Helenius didn't jump on him. And we'll talk about Deontay Wilder in that scenario in a moment. But those few seconds aside, again, it was AJ dictating. He was active. He landed a very solid left hook, which made Helenius misstep slightly. But he was landing the jab solidly. The up jab from that crouch position, he was landing it to the belly a lot better too. Round 6, again, it went to AJ. Helenius landed a sneaky left hook on an AJ entry, but again, he seemed tentative about letting his hands go. AJ dictated the rest of the round, but he looks tentative as well. And at one point, he worked Helenius back onto the ropes and didn't throw a right hand when it appeared on, and the crowd started booing. So the crowd were feeling AJ's being a bit gun shy here. Then what happened with the knockdown? What we spoke about as early as round 2. So as early in the second round on Twitter, I'm telling you guys he's got to throw a jab, change the level in order to draw in an attempted counter from Helenius, and from that level change, rise up with a shot because Helenius's exit is quite slow. And I want you to look at the way he came about getting the knockout. He threw that throwaway jab to the glove, nothing really on that. Then he throws a jab to the solar plexus. He doesn't really change level there at all, but he's given a pattern to Robert Helenius now. Helenius is going to look at that and think, right, the next time he does this, I'm going to try and counter him. So this time he's backed up, and now not only has he got a slow exit, Helenius, because his back's near the ropes, he doesn't have much room to exit from there anyway. So AJ repeats that. There's the jab to the glove, comes low this time, and the jab just clips him. He sort of comes to the side of the shoulder. He should have got a little bit sharper in the way that he came low there, AJ. But the point is, the level change came. And from there, there's nowhere to exit. His feet are a lot closer. And then over the top comes the right hand, bang. That's all she wrote. And that's exactly how we said that Anthony Joshua needed to set up that finish. And that's exactly what he did. And it was beautiful stuff from Anthony Joshua in the 7th round. Now, I heard Derek James on numerous occasions telling AJ, get your feet closer. But I didn't actually hear him tell him how to do that. I didn't hear him say, throw a throwaway shot, a feint, a jab, a double jab, then change the level and step in because his exit point is slow, which for me suggests that AJ figured that out on his own. And there have been people that have been very critical of AJ in the past about his ring IQ and his inability to adjust without instruction from the corner. He too has often blamed his corner for not giving him the right instructions at the right point. Well, he didn't get those instructions tonight as far as I can tell, and he made the adjustment on his own. So that bodes well for AJ. It's showing that he's a thinking fighter and he's figuring out things on his own. In terms of the link up with Derek James, it's too early to say it's not going to work because a trainer needs a lot of time. But so far, if you look at his couple of fights, it hasn't yet borne fruit. And stylistically, if he was to fight the way he fought tonight against Deontay Wilder, it's not going to work out very well for him. But perhaps he's got more time with Derek James now and he's going to perfect that style. But the reason I say this was a brilliant learning fight is because he can go back and look at that video now and say, you know what, I was a little bit too tentative. I was waiting too much. I had to be willing to get my feet closer by changing the level a lot more consistently, be more aggressive by entering the pocket, which will force Deontay Wilder back. I'm going to have to be a lot more unpredictable in my entry point so that he doesn't line me up on my entry, which is something he's very good at doing, Deontay Wilder. And then if I can do that and get inside and stay close and work from there, I can have real success against Deontay Wilder, coming in low and working my way up, because he's a guy that likes to lean back when he's stepping out all the way back to the point where he loses positioning. And when he's going to look for a knockout blow, he tends to want to step deep in with the jab and then launch it. If I stop that launching platform, then I essentially am in a position where I stop him from working. And this fight would have given him a lot of confidence with regards to that. Big, brutal, highlight reel knockout, gave a little what's it called? Not lap dance, a little lap of honor, lap dance. I hope he didn't give anyone a lap dance, a little lap of honor around the ring afterwards. But it's not the highlight reel knockout. It's not just the good stuff that you learn from. It's the stuff that didn't quite work. The stuff that you're going to look at and say, AJ, you see what you were doing here? That's not going to bode well against Deontay Wilder. We need to get going more quickly and do this sort of thing more quickly, early in the fight. I noticed that Helenius' exit point was poor in the first round, the speed of it. The second round, I'm telling you what he needs to do to close that range. By the second round, AJ needs to have figured it out. So whilst I commend him for figuring it out eventually, and you know, by the third and fourth, he did start to do it a lot more frequently, it wasn't consistent. You need to be more consistent with it against Deontay Wilder quickly. You need to figure out that entry point and stay in there quickly. And these are the little things that I think gives a real confidence boost. So for me, this was fantastic night for Anthony Joshua. I know it was not entertaining for the crowd and a lot of people were frustrated and booing at one point, but from a learning perspective, I think that's exactly what he needed tonight. Let me know what you think about Anthony Joshua's performance. Was it better or worse than you would have expected? How does it change your view about him going into the Deontay Wilder fight? Now let's talk about another couple of the heavyweight undercard fights. HRGOVIC, McKean. Listen, this put a lot of people to sleep. It was a very boring fight, but a lot of people confuse a lack of entertainment with being poor quality, and they confuse high entertainment with being top quality. Let's use football, soccer for the Americans out there, as a little analogy for a moment. In the UK, very attacking gung-ho football has always been at the heart of British football culture. And you'll often hear commentators and pundits, former players, when they're talking about the Italian national team or Juventus, for instance, they'll often talk about them with slightly less reverence than they do some of the top teams. They'll often undermine them slightly in terms of their level because there's this opinion that defensive football somehow equates to lesser quality. You're negative because you have to be. Because if you play an expansive game, you're going to be in serious trouble. But those teams can completely control a game. They can strangle an opposing outfit. They can create a situation where a 90-minute game is essentially killed to a 20-minute game. And for 70 minutes, nothing's going on. Neither team's doing anything. And then for 20 minutes, while the other team's huffing and puffing to score, the Italian team comes to life and they raise their level to a high level, score a goal or two, then close up shop again, and they end up winning the game. And you look at it and you hear a lot of people that are frustrated by it and they say they're so boring, they're not that good and stuff like that. But they're specialists at what they do. FILIP HRGOVIC, in some ways, is the Juventus of the heavyweight division. You see, he's got stamina issues. There's no doubt about it. This is not the first time we've seen him be pedestrian in his tempo. A lot of people came at me on Twitter for saying, don't confuse entertainment with high level. He's world class. There's no doubt about it. But there's certain things where he's got limitations, but he covers them well. He's not capable of going through the tempo, through the gears in terms of tempo consistently and to a high level. But what he's able to do is dictate that tempo. He's able to stop you from being able to go to work on him because he's got really nice feet and he's able to maintain range. And when he's not maintaining range, because he's got a fantastic chin and an underrated defense, he can get touched, but he has got a good chin and his defense is underrated. It's hard to land consecutive shots flush on him. He can know when to stay in the pocket. And you start to go to work and you're thinking, okay, I'm letting go of big shots, and they're not really getting through. They're clipping elbows, and when they do get through, he's able to take them. Then he steps out and you reach on your next shot and you're throwing everything into it because you're thinking, okay, he's tiring here, and really he's biding his time. And then he's going to come at you a moment or two later. And it's that individual shot that he's very, very good at. That first phase of attack. Very good with these counters. He'll measure you up with a nice shot. Today, the jab wasn't too consistent, but he was throwing this wide left hook and then stepping in with the right hand. And you saw Demsey McKeAN had a nice tactic whereby he was doing a similar thing, but on the exit of that right hand to the body, McKeAN would be throwing that right hook over the top of the lead hand of HRGOVIC to catch him as he's pulling out. Now, HRGOVIC started to read that, and he eventually started to throw it, and then as he's exiting, as he's pulling out, he'd throw his own short left hook, but he had to shorten it to come inside the arc of McKean's hook as well. So they were sort of jostling. There was some chess playing going on there. And McKean had this habit of often ducking on the inside towards the backhand of HRGOVIC. And there were too many times, in my opinion, where the uppercut was on for HRGOVIC and he was not throwing it. And Ronnie Shields was telling him, when you're up close, I don't want you tying up. I want you to let go of hooks to the body and the uppercut. I want you to let it go. And he wasn't doing it. And the reason he wasn't doing it, in my opinion, is because he has this natural problem with stamina. I don't think it's him not living the life seriously. I just think it's a natural stamina issue. Not everybody's going to be a long distance runner, right? So for me, what he does in order to deal with that is either take a walk and stay just outside the edge of range where you're overreaching and working hard but not being too damaging, or he'll stay right up in the pocket and he'll be able to tie you up. So he dictates tempo just like Juventus. So make no mistake, HRGOVIC is a very dangerous man. The problem that he has is that if there's one heavyweight who stylistically you don't want to have a gas tank issue with, it's Alexander Usyk. Because he's somebody that snowballs as a fighter and gets better and better, and he starts to improve and increase his tempo as you go on. So if you're not busting him up and hurting him early on, you're in trouble late on in the fight. And because HRGOVIC is a guy that throws single shots, albeit powerful shots, ones and twos, he's not going to go on that second phase. Usyk will fancy his chances of saying, you know what, I'm going to get this guy into that 8th, 9th round, and then I'm really going to start to go to work. I just need to be competitive for the first 8 rounds. So stylistically, of the big boys, the one that he's fighting next doesn't suit him stylistically. But Hrgovic is a world-class fighter. He's a top 10 heavyweight, which is my definition of world-class. There's no doubt about that. Let me know what you think. I know I'm in the minority, it seems to be, based on the messages I'm getting on Twitter. Moving on from that, let's quickly talk about Derek Chisora and Gerald Washington. Look, man, Chisora is one of the great warriors of British boxing. What a fighter he's been. He's been in there with the best of the best. But if anybody cares about Derek Chisora, you have to get this guy to hang his gloves up. For me, Matchroom need to offer him some sort of ambassadorial role. This is a guy who every time he gets in front of the camera, people are cracking up. You know he's going to help you sell a fight. So give him an excuse to step away from boxing. Because God forbid, we do not want to see this guy in a position where he's paying for all that heroism with struggling health. And then everyone's going to be putting up these hand praying emojis. That's fake. Don't care afterwards. Care before the fact, not after the fact. This is not what you want to see with Derek Chisora. This is a guy that was showing no head movement. He was just walking in, eating right hands, eating uppercuts. And because Gerald Washington is the sort of guy that does fold, and yeah, he did hear the final bell, but there were far too many rounds in there where he was disengaging and not letting go of his hands. You know that's what you're going to get with Gerald Washington. And Chisora was able to be tough, teak tough, and brute his way to a win. I had him winning 6-4 in rounds. I have no problem if you had Washington winning 6-4 in rounds. Teddy Atlas put out a tweet to say Washington would not have been able to live with Chisora 10 years ago. I know 10 years ago Washington wasn't a high-level fighter, but what he's ultimately saying is any version of Washington would not be a prime version of Derek Chisora. But he's able to hang with him now because of the decline of Chisora, but even now, Chisora's the tougher man, and I agree 100% with Teddy Atlas. Chisora was also slapping at points with a right hook to the body, and that was always a brutal shot for him. So because his feet aren't as fast, and he's not as durable, and his balance is all over the place, he can't even set up that shot. And whilst he was way past his best against Tyson Fury, what we've seen is a dramatic decline from there. So if you saw once Chisora up here, and against Fury he was here, now he's all the way off your screen. He's declined massively since that last outing. And after all, he took, a 10-round beating at the hands of Fury. You can't keep taking these beatings. They do take it out of you. So Chisora has been such a wonderful ambassador for British boxing. Brilliant for the sport. One of my favourite fighters to watch. If he does retire, I'm going to do a dedicated video on Chisora's career. But please, Del, step away. You've won. It was brilliant. I don't know about your Barbie attire. That was shocking. But you walked down to the ring with your kids. It was a beautiful moment. Enjoy the victory. Sail off into the sunset. Help promote the sport instead. Let me know what you think, ladies and gents, about all the fights we've spoken about. Please don't forget to hit a stiff jab on the like button, a right cross on the subscribe button, and an uppercut on the notifications button. Chat to you soon. Take care. God bless.